Hey everyone, it's time for another live look at the astrology. My name is Katie Sweetman, and this is your look at the astrology for December 23rd through 29th, 2024. So we are officially almost to the end of the year. I know it's the holiday season for those that celebrate, and kind of has been a wild 2024. So, for those that are watching live, as always, do say hello. It's like nice to see where everybody is watching from. And for those that know who I am, my name is Katie Sweetman. I'm an astrologer and psychic medium presently located in the rolling hills of central Maryland. And every week we gather live to look at the astrology. And you hear me say every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. And that's the thing. Astrology is about time, the energy of time, how we live time, and it seems rather perfect to make that point because it's now Capricorn season. We maybe talked a little bit about this last week, but I think we were still trying to come off of that really interesting a Gemini full moon that we had on December 15th. But nevertheless, as of the 21st, the sun is now in Capricorn because we had the winter solstice here in the northern hemisphere. I know we have people that are watching from the southern hemisphere, so you are reverse seasons. And yeah, so Capricorn is one of the four cardinal signs. The cardinal signs, which include Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, the final cardinal sign, they align with the four directions. And these four directions aren't just the four seasons, they're also the four pillars of life. They initiate change, meaning a change of seasons or this transition point, but they also speak about these areas of our life that we want to have rock solid, rooted and grounded. I realize that's not always the case because life is life. But when we reach, when we reach Capricorn season, we've reached not only the final cardinal sign, we've reached the final earth sign because Capricorn is a cardinal sign. It is an earth sign, which is one of the four elements. And it is one of the last few signs of the zodiac, which means we are coming to the end of the zodiac year. Not yet. We have to get to March for that to happen. When we get to the last few signs of the zodiac, Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, we've reached four signs that are not about our personal individual world. We are in a space that's collective. So with Sagittarius, it's about this fire. Sagittarius is a fire sign. It is the last fire sign. It is this fire that opens us up to the world outside of us. And for Sag season, it's a season to look beyond ourselves, to look up after looking down during the Scorpio season, and to connect with the fire of Sag, which is the fire of the stars. It's the fire of illumination. It's the fire of revelation. And so Sag can have these very deep points to it, but on a very surface level, it is a sign that talks about higher education, religion, law, philosophy, truth, meaning, faith. Of course, we live Sag in our own way because we are all individual people, but it does talk about a sign and even its ruling planet, Jupiter, a part of our world that's bigger than us. So when we get to this part of the zodiac, in theory, we're beginning to wonder, okay, where am I going? What's the meaning and purpose of my life? What do I want to build? What do I want to become? What do I want to be when I grow up? Because that passage from Sag to Capricorn, Capricorn follows Sagittarius, it is to take that fire of inspiration, motivation, illumination, and to make it real, to make it concrete. Fire, and certainly its companion element, air, it's all ideas. Ideas are great, but what are we going to do to make it real, to make it lived, to make it grounded? It's no coincidence that we get to this time of the year. I realize we've come to the end of the year just about, and we're beginning to ask ourselves bigger questions. not just from the Sag perspective, and I realize that it's not Sag season anymore, but also from the Capricorn season. Capricorn and its ruling planet Saturn talk about time. How do we live time? How do we inhabit time? How do we show up? How do we honor our commitments? And how do we age? Meaning not just physically age, but how do we age and sort of grow and mature? And everybody ages differently, everybody matures differently. But there is a general arc that we all go through because time is relatively a constant. I say relatively because we can get into some philosophical conversations about time and energy and how we live time. And sometimes we live time quickly, sometimes we live time slowly. But the sun rises, it sets. We have the 4 seasons, even if we live in a part of the world where there isn't 4 seasons. And so this is the passage of time. And if you've been around these parts long enough, you know that I love Saturn. It's not the planet that you're typically supposed to love because traditionally speaking, it's not only the greater malefic, and that's what I'm saying, traditionally speaking, but it's also the planet of teeth and bones and limitations and boundaries. But I think when we flip the script a little bit on Saturn and we use it as a positive energy to build and construct our life, to honor our commitments, to show up on time, to mature, to grow, and to eventually to grow up to become something. Because I think Saturn and Capricorn in its highest expression talks about what is the potentiality of what we can become. So we reach this part of the year and we're sort of asking the questions that we typically ask ourselves because we're going into a new year. What's working? What's not working? I know, maybe you're like, Katie, I want to think about the holidays. I don't want to think about Saturn and Capricorn, but we actually have a lot of Saturn energy this week. So it's sort of there. We can't really quite work our way around it. And, with this energy this week, with this energy of Capricorn season, we need to start to frame our lives. I know that that's a big statement. We're all different ages. We all are living our lives differently. But how do we frame our life? So how do we begin to take the steps that we need to take in order to become? What needs to change within ourselves? What needs to grow and mature so that we can become the people that we need to become for 2025 and beyond? It's just something to reflect on. So that said, Capricorn typically puts things in black and white. Saturn is certainly a black and white planet. It's of course got the rings around it. That part is an astronomical comment, but astrologically speaking, it talks about the rings of time and how we live time. And so our life has a very predictable pattern based on Saturn. You've maybe heard me say this before, or if you're my client, you've heard me say this, is that our life has a very, it's like we have a skeleton within the time that we live our life. We have a structure that we all share as human beings. And we have key ages. These are the Saturn ages of, let's say, 21, 29, 37, 38, 45, 46, 51, 52, 58, 59, 60, and I could keep going on, where our life wants to take shape and take form. We need that push and that pull of time and energy to shape our lives, for us to grow and mature. And I wanted to highlight that because this week, Jupiter is square Saturn. So remember how I was talking about how we go from Sag season to Capricorn season, and we need to make something real. So here we are, we have this week where we have Jupiter. Jupiter is in Gemini. It's been in Gemini since May of 2024. Saturn is in Pisces. Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. And they're square each other. It's actually the second square that we've had. We had one, I think it was August 19th. So just, like 4 months ago, if I'm doing my math correctly. And you have to understand that these two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, they were the last known planets to the ancients. So if let's say it's 500 years ago, I look up into the sky, perhaps I look up into the sky. Mind you, the sky doesn't repeat itself for 26,000 years, but let's say it's the sky as it is right now. Right now I see Mars. It's not quite rising yet this time of day, but I see Jupiter in the sky quite bright because Jupiter is about to either turn retrograde or... And then I can see Saturn. And Saturn is the last visible planet. So anything beyond Saturn is a modern discovery. I put modern air quotes because Uranus was discovered in 1781. So 200 odd years ago isn't 250 years ago isn't quite modern, but from the perspective of astrology, it is relatively modern because the ancient astrologers, they knew nothing of Uranus. They knew nothing of Pluto and Neptune and even the newer discoveries beyond that whole other conversation. So my point is that from the perspective of astrology, and certainly from a traditional lens, Saturn and Jupiter represent these sort of forces that are building and shaping and growing our lives. I know that point's a little lost in the hustle and bustle of this time of year and the things that we have to do, and maybe even if we're not doing anything, still this energy we are living it. And so that's the thing, I say every week, the astrology is 50%. You are the other 50%. How do you work with this energy? Because these are like the tectonic plates of your life moving, albeit quite slowly, very almost imperceptibly. But it's for us to look back. For example, we had Saturn square Jupiter, or Jupiter square Saturn in 2015-16. So that's a while ago. What was going on in your life 2015-16? Was there something forging, taking shape, taking form, building? Was there a process of growth and maturity at that time? Saturn was in Sagittarius. Jupiter would have been Virgo around that time. So here we are. We had the conjunction on December 21st of 2020 between Jupiter and Saturn. So these are periods of time that thread together because remember, astrology, it's a spiral, it's an arc, it's a circle, it's a wheel. The zodiac is a wheel. So that's an energy that's with us this week. But then we have to take into account that Jupiter is in Gemini, which is a sign that's about ideas and information and sort of facts and learning and curiosity. And then we have Saturn over in Pisces, other end of the zodiac from Gemini. And Pisces is way more existential. It's not facts. It's not ideas. It's not information. And that doesn't mean that, Pisces, eschews facts and information, but it means that when we get to Pisces, the ideas and information of Gemini have to mean something. Pisces is a very subjective sign. It's not objective, meaning it's not rational. It doesn't add up. It means that it means something for you. And so that adds this flavor to the astrology of this week. And when I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, especially for those that are a mutable sign, because Gemini is a mutable sign, Pisces is a mutable sign. And if you have Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces strong in your astrology at the time you were born, maybe you're really feeling that push and that pull to step into something, to step into a role of maturity. Or maybe you're reflecting like, who am I? What am I trying to make my life into? What am I trying to become? What's my potential? Because Saturn is still Saturn, and sometimes Saturn, there's this other side of Saturn where we can be a little critical of ourselves, or we sort of feel like we're not perfect enough. That's the negative side of Saturn. But so to the best of your ability, considering that it is the time of year that it is, how do we take an assessment? How do we look at our lives objectively? Maybe looking also from a subjective lens as well, not as a critical lens, but really to hope and dream for what can we become? Who do we need to become? What do we want to grow? Who do we want to be when we grow up? What do we want to be when we grow up? So these are these two energies, Jupiter and Saturn, that are pushing and pulling at things this week. And I made the comment about how they were the last known planets to the ancients because they really speak to the world that it builds around us. Jupiter takes 11 and a half years to go through the zodiac. Saturn takes 29 and a half years to go through the zodiac. So we're not dealing with, Mercury or Venus, these planets that move quite quickly, relatively so. Speaking of Mercury, it's still in Sagittarius because we had that retrograde November into December, and Mercury is making its final square to Saturn. There's that planet again. Now, whereas Jupiter talks about the bigger picture, like what do we believe in? What do we stand for? What's our faith? What's our truth? What meaning and purpose do we have in our life? What do we fill our life with? Mercury is a little bit more, how do we speak? How do we listen? How do we learn? How do we communicate? What are the choices that we're making? And with the square to Saturn, mind you, is the last square to Saturn. We had one in November, and I believe one earlier in December. And we need to be more accountable. We need to consider our options wisely. We need to be the master of our choices, for example. So that's also in the mix this holiday week. And especially now that Mercury is out of its retrograde. It's been out of retrograde since December 15th. It's kind of a closing of something, or a need to come to a conclusion or come to the end of a little bit of a story. I can't remember when Mercury gets out of its shadow, but I know that we're sort of working our way to that point. So having said that, looking at this week with the energies of Mercury square Saturn, with the energies of Jupiter square Saturn, with just Capricorn season in general, where are you feeling the energies of time? Where are you feeling the energies of commitment and needing to make choices? Again, not super fun, but it is what it is. I report on the astrology. I do not make the astrology. So also important, I've already mentioned Saturn and Pisces, but just sort of your reminder that this Capricorn season points us over to Saturn in Pisces, because Saturn, as the ruling planet of Pisces, brings the energy of the season, brings the energy of Capricorn over to Pisces. And Saturn is sort of rounding out its time in Pisces next year. It makes its first arrival in Aries, but it's in the ballpark of Neptune. And it's just sort of an interesting overlay, because as much as Capricorn is really structured and organized and has these really crystal clear boundaries and borders, with Pisces not so much. It's kind of been an interesting year and a half with Saturn in Pisces, and certainly with Saturn with Neptune as well. And so it just sort of adds to this more existential and even spiritual overlay to the season as you sort of do the things that you typically do at this time of year. You're like, okay, I'm going to stop doing this. I'm going to do more of this. I need to make a schedule. I need to show up on time. These are all Capricorn, Saturn things. But it's not to necessarily do things, I think this is the Pisces side, do things out of rigid obligation and duty. It is to do things because it fulfills you. It means something to you. That part is the Pisces part. And Pisces has actually got a lot going on in 2025. In fact, on January 11th, we're going to have the lunar nodes change signs. This happens every 18 months. It's, since July of 2023, the lunar nodes have been in Aries and Libra. So we've been having eclipses in Aries and Libra, but starting January 11th, so less than, 3 weeks from now, the lunar nodes change. And it says that this sort of personal and collective arc that we've all been on now moves towards Pisces and Virgo. These are two signs that are very driven by service, by helping other people, by meaning. But at the same time, Virgo is so tactile, so rational, so organized, just as a sign. Of course, people can live that energy differently. And then Pisces is the opposite. It doesn't mean that there is this sort of, fight between the two. It just means that we need to find the balance between Virgo, so rational, so grounded, and Pisces, so magical, so intuitive. And so my sort of joke about Virgo Pisces is that it can't be so rational and so pragmatic that we lose the magic. It can't be so magical that we lose the groundedness and the practicality. So we have to find the balance between the two. The other thing, for 2025, we actually have a lot going on, unusually so. I say that because not only does Saturn change signs, that's not so unusual. Jupiter changes signs, that happens every year, but Neptune will go into Aries after 13 years, yes, 13 years in Pisces, and then we also have Uranus going to Gemini after 6 years in Taurus. These are our first arrivals of these outer planets, all on the heels of Pluto going into Aquarius throughout 2023 and 4. So we are going into a year where it's like the hands on the cosmic clock are beginning to point towards new hours. What will this mean for you? Well, I did a 3-hour webinar. You can still get the recording. The link is in the show notes, or you can go to my website, empoweringastrology.com. And not only do I give an overview for the year, and I look at each of the months, sort of cherry pick out some points that we need to look at for each of the months. I do also a sign-by-sign guide. So you can go to empoweringastrology.com. You don't have to watch all 3 hours, but certainly you have a lot of content to get through for the coming year. And of course, we'll continue to talk about 2025 as we get closer. So, for example, when we get into Capricorn season next year, Saturn will be back in Pisces, even though we had Saturn make its first arrival in Aries from, I think it's May 24th to September 1st, 2025. But by Capricorn season 2026, it is Capricorn season with Saturn and Aries, just for example. So yeah, lots going on next year, but of course we can just focus on this week at the moment. But yeah, we're coming to the end of the year. I know it's the holiday season. I said this last week. If you want to get a gift certificate, I do gift certificates. Having said that, let's go into the astrology of each of the 12 zodiac signs. Starting with Aries. Aries, so Saturn is your planet. So Capricorn, no, Saturn's not your planet. Sorry, I'm thinking Saturn and Aries. Mars is your planet, and Mars is still retrograde. In fact, if you look up into the sky at night, depending on where you are in the world, you can see Mars really, really, really bright right now, because Mars, when it's retrograde, it is brighter. Anyway, Mars is in Leo. So as you go through this last week of the year, you've got your energies pointing toward Leo: creativity, self-expression, identity. But that said, Saturn, Mars is retrograde. So it's for you to start to pick up on what is this deeper theme that's presenting itself for you during this retrograde that takes you all the way to February of 2023. Do you know who you are? Where do you put your time and your energy? Are you connected to your passion? Do you feel a little burnt out? It's for you to see, again, what is the theme in your own life. Mars is in this rather long opposition to Pluto, so it is putting some evolutionary force on you as you go into the new year and even into April, May, and June. Having said that, with the sun in Capricorn, it means that the sun is now in your 10th sign. So you go into the new year also where the energies, especially after next Monday's new moon in Capricorn, it's about either your public life, your professional life, your duties and your responsibilities, and beginning to get even clearer about who you are in the world and the role that you want to play, and even what do you want to be when you grow up. Keep in mind, and this is something that we've been talking about since 2023, Saturn, which is a career planet, and it pulls the energy of the season over to something called your 12th. This is going to mean different things to different Aries. You're coming to the end, certainly not until the beginning of 2026, but in 2025, you're beginning to come to the end of this period where you've needed to reach the end of a great cycle in your life. You've needed to release things, let things go, get into these sort of deeper existential questions. Why am I here? What am I doing? And I wanted to highlight that because Capricorn season and even the Capricorn new moon next week on the 30th highlights this energy. And so as you go into the new year, you might be in a little bit more of a reflective mood. That said, you do have Jupiter square Saturn this week. You do have Mercury square Saturn this week. And so it is a week for you to ask yourself questions, whether these are small questions, but they're probably bigger questions and needing to make some decisions. Sometimes Saturn puts things in black and white. It's either works or it doesn't. And maybe this isn't relative or relevant for every Aries that's listening, but with this sort of bigger arc that you're in, and even in advance, because we will have one last eclipse in Aries in 2025 in March, that this is sort of, you're like weirdly on, one foot in a new life, one foot in an old life, certainly now and even into 2025. And so be very conscientious about what you want to bring with you into 2025 and what you want to let go. Taurus. So Venus is your planet, and Venus is presently in Aquarius. So you sort of go into the new year. Certainly this last week, I realize it's a weird week for it, but just a lot of focus on your professional life. So whether that literally means that you've just got a lot of busy things happening as you close out the year and you go into the new year, whether you just are more thinking about your professional life and your public roles and duties and responsibilities. And it's just your periodic reminder, Taurus, is that you now have Pluto in your career sign. It's been there since November. And so you're in a larger, bigger shift, something that will mean something specific to your own life. That said, Venus does make a square to Uranus this week, and that will be on the 28th of December. I wanted to highlight that because all week you may be feeling this square to Uranus. And Uranus, it's an energy that doesn't want you to be small. It doesn't want you to be stuck. It is actually very unsentimental. All it knows is that you're stuck, you're not happy, you're not in something that's working, or you need a breakthrough. And so you might feel this Uranian energy that's pushing you, maybe you feel restless, you need a change, and that's something that will carry over into the new year. But having said that, Capricorn season is, Capricorn is something called your ninth sign. It is a fellow earth sign. You're an earth sign. And when you reach the ninth, it kind of plays on these bigger existential questions. There's that word again, existential. But with with the ninth is, what do I believe in? What do I stand for? It is the external search for answers. Whether you get on a plane, you go to college or university, whether you read all the books you can get your hands on, whether you get into philosophy or even religion. So Capricorn season is asking you big questions. With Saturn and Pisces, it does sort of talk about the future direction, and making sure that the direction that you are taking is in alignment with your truth and some sort of deeper meaning and purpose in your life. Gemini, Mercury is your planet, and it is wrapping up its time in Sag, but before it does that, it's making a square to Saturn this week, but really it's taking you into the end of the year. So your energy has been pulled over towards relationships, I think since November, or maybe late October. I can't remember when Mercury first went into Sagittarius. So on some level, Gemini, it's about other people right now. Your relationship with other people, how you connect and interact and socialize with other people, sort of the power dynamics that can even come up with people having to negotiate. And for some people, it is about your romantic relationships, if that's even relevant for you. With Mercury square Saturn, since essentially the first square was the 1st of November, you've had to really weigh your options. You've had to really take a step up. Saturn is a planet that demands accountability. It demands maturity, whether that maturity is about you, it's about your relationships, it's about how you connect and interact and socialize with people. But then Jupiter is in your sign. So you've got, this sort of push and pull. You've got what's called it's called a mutual reception. And on one hand, Jupiter is really inspiring and motivating you over the past few months. It's about making your life bigger. It's about wanting more, growing your life, taking action, moving forward. But there's something, again, about relationships. It's like a little sticky point that you've had to sort of go back to, possibly. It is, in theory, on paper, a big time to be a Gemini. You've got Saturn in your 10th of career. The Jupiter square Saturn also says it's a week for you to make a decision about a relationship, whether that's literally about a relationship or some sort of need to set boundaries, to set borders, to say, this is what I want, this is not what I want, this is what I want in the future, a future partnership, this is not what I want right now. But Saturn is sort of pushing this energy this week about needing to make some sort of decision or needing to get clear about something. You'll have to let me know how this is showing up in your life. And, that said, Capricorn season does take you through something called your 8th sign. This is something we'll talk more about next week, especially with the Capricorn new moon. But the 8th is a space for any sign, and for you, it just happens to be Capricorn, where we have to face ourselves. So there is some element that's working its way through your experiences over the next 3.5 weeks, where it is the time in your personal calendar to look within, to face yourself, to ask yourself deep questions, to see what's hidden, to go into themes of trust and vulnerability, power, control, intimacy, but also money and finance, assets, wealth. These are other matters of the 8th, but it's a bit of a psychological time, and sort of as an aside, also a reminder that Pluto's no longer in your 8th. It was there for 16 years. Pluto has moved on, another conversation for another time, but I think maybe this is the season for you to capitalize on all the work that you've done over the previous years with Pluto in your 8th. No longer there anymore. But if you have become more mature, if you have redefined your relationship with intimacy and vulnerability, if you have transformed your relationship with power and control, this is the season for you to live it. Cancer, the moon is your planet. And so this week it is moving through Libra, Scorpio. We're going to have Scorpio moon on Christmas Day. That's going to be interesting. Scorpio, and then into the weekend, it's in Sag. So we are coming to the end of the lunar cycle because you are ruled by the moon. Typically, you're filled with the lunar cycle. Lunar cycle. I don't know why that was a tongue twister. A little bit more than your average person. And with the lunar cycle coming to the end, it is naturally a week to reflect, to rest, to not push it too hard. Again, I know it's sort of a funny time to say that, especially as you go into the weekend. It will be the dark of the moon. The dark of the moon is a time to get quiet. Capricorn is a fellow, cardinal sign. And your cardinal sign, the other cardinal signs are Libra and Aries. And Capricorn season puts the energy on relationships. So the sun is there. It's lighting up this time in your life where it's about other people, especially after that Capricorn new moon of next week on December 30th. So even though it's a time, ironically, to rest and to reflect, it's also about other people. Maybe there's things to do. Maybe it's about a relationship in your life. More so after the new moon on the 30th of December. That said, this is a Capricorn season where we no longer have Pluto in Capricorn. I know that it has been 16 years, Cancer, with Pluto in your relationship sign. So as we go further into the season, after we get past that Capricorn new moon next week, just remember to live the work that you have done, because there has been a great work of alchemy and transformation over the last decade plus while Pluto was in Capricorn. That said, with the energy this week of Jupiter square Saturn, it is pushing and pulling at sort of like, how do you organize your life? How do you show up on time? What are the rituals and practices that you employ to really, ground and live your life? Mercury is also square Saturn, and just, with Saturn ruling relationships, there may be a need to make a choice about a relationship or to set stronger boundaries in relationship. And let's not forget, although it's a little bit more of a philosophical point, Saturn is in your ninth. It's been there since March of 2023. And this continues to be a time to sort of open up your world, figure out what you believe in, what you stand for, and sort of these sort of bullet points that may be forming in your life about, what do you want? What's your truth? What's your vision for relationships? Maybe these are things that are becoming more and more concrete, especially as we get into next week's new moon. Leo, so the sun is your planet, and so every time the sun goes through Capricorn season, it brings you through something called your sixth sign. The sixth sign for any sign, but for you it's Capricorn, talks about health, wellness, how you show up on a day-to-day level, the different systems that organize and build your life, your sense of duty and responsibility on a day-to-day level, but also really inhabiting your life. And so Capricorn says to Leo, it's time to get things organized. It's time to clean things out. It's time to take your health and wellness seriously. Of course, that means different things to different Leos. And with the sun now in Capricorn, and I've sort of been saying this for the last few signs, but I think it's worth taking awareness of the fact that Pluto is no longer in your sixth. It has been in your sixth, or was in your sixth, from January 2008 all the way to November 2024. And so with the sun there, it is to now nourish a space that Pluto did a big work of transformation on your physical body, on your relationship with health and wellness over the last decade plus. Something that we'll revisit with the Capricorn new moon next week. That said, Leo, you do have Venus square Uranus this week. Venus is in your relationship sign. Venus is also square Uranus. Uranus is in your career sign. And without sort of saying too much, because we've been talking about this for the last 6 years, Uranus continues to be in your career sign. This continues to be a time to transform your public life, your public reputation, your relationship with duties and responsibilities. There may be something that wants to illuminate, that wants to shake things up, that wants to give you a different perspective. The square will be on the 28th, so Saturday. I know it's a funny time of year to talk about career, but maybe you are gaining a different perspective, or a light bulb is going off that will help you to see your path a little bit differently as you go into 2025. Virgo, so Mercury is your planet, and it's still in Sagittarius. It's been in Sagittarius, I think, since the end of October. I can't remember the exact date, but I do know that Mercury made its first square to Saturn back on November 1st. So there has been this story that's been going on since the beginning of November. And your planet turned retrograde in November, and it turned direct on December 15th. And while it was doing that, it was sort of doing two things. One, Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a sign that, sort of talks about the bigger scope of life. What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What do you think is true? Sag also forms the base and foundation of your personal astrology. So it's also about home, family, roots, foundation, where is home, and who is home. This square to Saturn is over in your seventh. Saturn is in your seventh sign of relationships, Pisces. It's been there since March of 2023. And so this sort of back and forth and needing to reevaluate, needing to go within, needing to see things that you haven't been seeing, also picks up on the home environment, and it picks up on relationships. For some people, Mercury square Saturn has been a call for boundaries, a call for more commitment, to either say yes to somebody, to say no to somebody, to get very clear about the type of people that you want in your life. It's been a little bit of a tricky spot for Mercury to be in, if I'm being completely honest, because Saturn can kick our butts a little bit, if I'm, again, being even more honest. But it is an energy that wants you to show up, to be completely 100%, to have your things in order. Of course you would. Virgo, but it's sort of like put you in a place where you just can't necessarily enjoy and take a vacation. You have to sort of take care of things for the past month and a half. Last square to Saturn this week on the 27th of December, and then, I think it's in the beginning of like the second week of January, then Mercury can get into Capricorn. So it continues to be about the home environment, it continues to be about relationships, and even with Jupiter square Saturn this week, it's something that's sort of this bigger overlay that takes you into the new year about either saying yes to a relationship. I know I said this already, but it sort of doubles the point. Saying yes to a relationship, saying no to a relationship, needing to have some serious conversations with a person that's in your life, whether that is just a relationship, lowercase r relationship, or it is a capital R relationship, romantic or otherwise. But Jupiter also rules your career. And wait, am I doing that? Jupiter, no, it doesn't rule your career. It rules your home environment, but Mercury is also square Saturn. Mercury does rule your career, rules you. Wait, I'm not doing the astrology right. Yes, it does rule your career. So it may feel like the four corners of your life, the things that are really sort of holding up the container of your life, are up for questioning right now. Maybe that's relevant for you, maybe that's not relevant for you, but I would just sort of take this energy for what it is and use it to build, to construct, to set boundaries, to organize, and perhaps even to clean things out. Libra. So Venus is your planet and it's still in Aquarius. So Aquarius is something called your fifth sign. I remember last week I did the opposite. Your fifth sign talks about these themes about self. Who are you? How do you express who you are? What is your sense of identity? What's your creativity? What's your passion? Like, how do you express your passion? How do you connect to your passion? But Venus, Venus is square Uranus this week. It makes the square on the 28th of December. So if Venus rules you and it's square Uranus this week, there is a point of friction as you go into next week. And Uranus continues to be in a space, although this will begin to change in 2025, that talks about the deep self. Well, who are you? Well, there's the self that you sort of know, and perhaps that's the ego, but then there's the other self. You're like, what are you talking about, Katie? The 8th, which is where Uranus has been since 2018-19, talks about the need to reveal the true self, the hidden self, to go from S, lowercase s, self, ego, identity, to capital S, self. Hopefully this makes sense because it really might be stirring some things up this week. It's certainly a weird time, to sort of do a lot of navel gazing and sort of ask yourself big questions, but that's really what the astrology is doing this week. Even, as we go through Christmas and the days around Christmas, the moon's in Scorpio, so it's pulling at themes about value and worth and trust and intimacy and vulnerability. That said, Capricorn season, Capricorn is a fellow cardinal sign just like you. Cardinal signs align with the four directions and the four seasons, and Capricorn season is about home, family, roots, foundation, and maybe it's getting into a little bit of the deeper material about home and family, roots, foundation, and past and memory, especially as we get into that Capricorn new moon on the 30th of December next week, Monday. But this takes you into the new year, and so this is a time to really focus on your home environment, but I think there's some emotional cleaning up and cleaning out that needs to happen, and perhaps even some physical cleaning up and cleaning out, because Saturn continues to be in your sign of health and wellness. Scorpio. So Mars is your planet. And if you look up into the sky, probably it's too early to do this in a few hours, you can see Mars beginning to rise in the east, at least here where I am in central Maryland. But Mars is particularly bright right now. In fact, you can see why it's called the red planet, apart from the fact that we can, science shows us that it's red, but you can see how it has a red hue because Mars, as it's retrograde, it's brighter in the sky. It turned retrograde on December 6th. Anyway, astronomy lesson over. So your planet is retrograde into February 2023. This happens every 2 years. So a retrograde doesn't mean that your life is on hold until February 2023, February 23rd, 2025. But it means that there's something that needs to be revealed, something that needs to be uncovered, because a retrograde, by its nature, goes to the past. It gets into this yin receptive energy. It is not yang active. So we are sort of going back instead of forward. Again, it doesn't mean that life is on hold, but you need to make sure that you understand what you're not looking at or your hidden motivations. Mars is about you, but it's also about power. Mars is in Leo right now, and it's about desire. What do you desire? Is your life aligning with what you truly desire, what you truly want? And not on a like ego level, like, oh, I need this title, this status, or this money, or whatever. I think, because Leo gets into these very primal desires, like, who am I? Like, what's my passion? What lights me up? What sort of motivates me and puts me out into the world? So what do you desire, Scorpio? I realize that's a question that you're still, untangling as you go into the new year. Starting on, I think it's January 3rd, Mars will cross back into Cancer. And Cancer is more emotional. It'll talk about, getting into these primal needs and wants. And this need to really spend January and February getting into more of a philosophical heart of what you want in the world, what do you desire, and how, and what kind of life do you want to create. So, having said that, it's Capricorn season. Capricorn is something called your third sign. It's voice, it's communication, it's how you think and listen and learn. And maybe it's worthwhile as you do all this sort of retrograde reflection. This is the first Capricorn season, like literally since 2008. Wait, is that true? Did we have Capricorn season in 2023? Had Pluto back in Capricorn, if I'm remembering my astrology correctly. I'm sorry, but my point is that if this is not the last time since 2008, but certainly you haven't had Pluto in your sign of voice and communication in a while, and so it's really to live the work, the work to really take your voice seriously, to find the power of your voice, to inhabit your voice, to be more mature in your voice. That it's been going on since the last decade plus. We will have a Capricorn new moon. We'll talk more about this next week. I will also say that we do have Jupiter and Mercury square Saturn this week. These are two planets that get more into your material life. What do you need? Like, what's your value? What's your worth? And needing to set some material goals, maybe to set some material boundaries, look at spending and set some goals for the future in 2025. But it is more about you. It's about your material life, material needs and security, and really getting into some more pragmatic things as you go into the new year. Sagittarius. So lots going on in your astrology. I realize it's no longer your season, but your planet, Jupiter, is got a lot going on this week. So let's walk back a little bit. You've heard me say this quite a few times already, but your planet, Jupiter, has been in Gemini since the end of May of 2024. So that takes your energy and it points you over towards relationships. So you could just say bare bones, Sag, that this is a time in your life from May of 2024 to June of 2025 where it's about focusing on other people. Whether that means more socialization, connection, more relationships, a relationship coming into your life, maybe even a relationship leaving your life. But that is sort of like the baseline read of your astrology at the moment. Then there's Saturn. And we've been talking about Saturn since 2023 because Sagittarius and even Sag rising, you have been in a time in your life where you have either been needing to settle down. And I realize settling down means different things to different people, but it points the focus, sort of the major focus about home and family, putting down roots, tending to the foundation of your life. Maybe there's been a major move. Maybe you are thinking about a major move in the new year. Maybe have been prioritizing family. Maybe you're continuing to prioritize family even more in the new year. So with Jupiter square Saturn, it's really pointing to these 4 big directions of your life. You, relationships, family, and career. These are the 4 directions of life, at least according to astrology. And so with this sort of force and this energy, and even Mercury is square Saturn this week, you need to get clear about something. Even if it's clear to yourself, if you need to write it out on a piece of paper, this is what I want, this is what I need, this is what I don't want. Maybe it's serious conversations, or maybe you're being asked to step up more into a role of responsibility. That's the thing about Saturn. Saturn talks about time, but Saturn also talks about responsibility. So more is being asked of you this week. And, Jupiter did make a square to Saturn the one time before, and that was August 19th of 2024. And then there will be a 3rd square on June 15th of 2025, although that will be between Cancer and Aries. So this time in your life, it's trying to build you, forge you, shape you. Something wants to manifest, something wants to become real. It's more focused on relationships and family and the home environment. I will add that we had the Jupiter square Saturn back in 2015 and 16, just a time to go back and to reflect. But this is just a big week that sort of puts this Saturnian veneer on everything, growing up, growing older, getting wiser, and hopefully making the right decisions. Capricorn. So Saturn is your planet. It's still in Pisces, and Saturn has just got a lot going on this week, but let's not forget that it's your birthday season. Happy birthday, Capricorn. I love Capricorn energy. My grandmother was a Capricorn. I realize it can be like boss energy, and so this is a season, whether you are a Capricorn or not, to really find your inner boss, or at least to reconnect to that energy. Capricorn season, not just your birthday, but it is, again, this reminder that Saturn, your planet, continues to be in Pisces. And I've talked about this before. It's just kind of an interesting place for your planet to be. Very different than how things were 2018 all the way to 2023, when Saturn was in Capricorn and it was in Aquarius. Pisces has a very different motivation than it does when it was in Capricorn and Aquarius, the 2 previous signs. Pisces is all about meaning and purpose. Why am I here? What am I doing? What are the choices that I'm making in my life? There is this duality to Saturn. On one hand, it is the sign of matter in the material world. It's teeth and bones, it's structure, it's the physicality of life and sort of the legacy of what we build. But there's also this other side to Capricorn, and it does talk to that sort of sea goat version of you. This, you look at the art, you can Google it, goat with a fishtail. And it talks about this need to build a material life, but that material life is a support for something that has deeper meaning and purpose. So with that in mind, with the Mercury square Saturn this week, with Jupiter square Saturn this week, which in a way threads back to you, it's a week of choices. Either it's a week of choices or a need to be more accountable, a need to sort of get clear about what direction you're going into 2025. You're sort of at a fork in the road, maybe. Maybe it's sort of these more spiritual, esoteric, philosophical, meaning and purpose questions that you're weighing. But Saturn, because you are ruled by Saturn, you're a Capricorn and Capricorn rising, it's still a black and white planet. It demands a yes, it demands a no, it demands a boundary, it demands time and investment, showing up, and really to inhabit something, whatever it is that you've been creating over the last, let's say, year and a half with Saturn and Pisces. We'll talk more about this with the Capricorn new moon. So there will be a Capricorn new moon on December 30th. So if it's your birthday, December 30th, plus or minus a couple of days, you have this new moon, new beginning energy that takes you into the new year. But that said, sort of see what are the bigger questions that are coming up this week, and to be very mature and mindful, I don't know, maybe to mirror as well, but to be, really inhabit these choices that you're making, to make conscientious choices, because these are things that are really shaping the direction that things are taking as you go into 2025. Aquarius, so Saturn is your planet, and it's kind of like a lot of stuff going on with Saturn at the moment. I realize it's not quite your season. The sun has just gone into Capricorn, so we've come to the end of your personal zodiac calendar, whether you are an Aquarius or Aquarius rising. The basic structure of time, at least through the lens of astrology, is that when the sun gets to the last sign of our personal astrology, it's time to go beyond this world, because that space in theory exists beyond this world. It's not our ambitions, it's not our day-to-day life. It's about meaning and purpose. It's about reflecting on what we've been building and even choosing over the previous 11 months. On a more surface level, this is not the season for you to sort of do a lot of big things. It's more internal, it's more rest, it's more preparation for your birthday season that, of course, begins when the sun goes into Aquarius around, like the 19th or 20th of January. So that said, with Jupiter square Saturn this week, with Mercury square Saturn this week, you may be in a little bit more of an existential mood. Existential means that you're looking towards the bigger picture of your life, regardless of what you believe in, and you're like, what is this for? What am I building? Like, what am I creating? What's my legacy? I realize these are not light questions, but these are the things that are really being pressed upon this week. Don't forget, I'm sure you haven't, but since November 19th, you now have a visitor, a long-term visitor in your sign, Aquarius, and that's Pluto. So on one hand, Pluto is saying, hey, Aquarius, your life is transforming. It has to transform. And that, by its nature, may be bringing up a lot of these deeper questions. If my life is transforming, for what purpose? For why? Like, what part is me? What part is not me? What part what do I need to let go of? And maybe as we go into next week's Capricorn new moon, that will sort of bring that question, or questions plural, up to the surface even more. But on some level, this is a week of needing to make some decisions. I will add, because Venus does rule your home environment. Venus rules your home environment. Venus is in Aquarius right now. Venus is square Uranus this week, especially going into the 28th. So it's a little bit could be disruptive holiday season. It could be a season where it's very different than previous seasons. It could be something about family and home needs to change, wants to change. But it's just for you to sort of see what's coming up as you go into this weekend. Pisces. Last but not least, Pisces. So continues to be a big time to be a Pisces. Why? Because Jupiter, your planet, which has been in Gemini since the end of May 2024, has been in a square to Saturn. This week's square to Saturn, this will be on December 24th. This is the second of 3 squares that takes you into 2025. There will be a final square on June 15th of 2025, but we're not there yet. What's a square? Well, on one hand, Jupiter represents you. You're a sign that by its very nature needs meaning and purpose. It needs something to be fulfilling. That's just the nature of Jupiter, especially as a Pisces. It doesn't necessarily look externally, it looks internally. With the energy of you pointing towards Gemini, which is your sign of home, family, roots, foundation, this might also talk about your home environment, your living situation, family, and even these sort of bigger themes around family and home. What's a square? A square is a 90-degree angle, and so Saturn is making a 90-degree angle to you. So basically since the start of June of this year, you've been under this push and pull and this forging for you to either grow, to mature, for something to become real in your life, something to become solid, for something to build, for something to set boundaries. it's for you to go back and to sort of see what is the narrative arc, certainly since June of this year, because Saturn typically marks the major hours, time, and chapters of our life. So if something wants to become real, maybe something real is a move, or it's a change in your home environment, or it's starting a family, or it's getting very clear about the role of family or the home environment in your life. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's relationships. Maybe it's career. Maybe it's sort of thinking about these sort of bigger themes about what am I building? What am I building in my life? Saturn continues to be in Pisces. That's you. That's your rising sign. That's your sun sign. And so into 2025, a lot is still, it continues to ask a lot of you. I know I've been talking about this certainly since 2023. When Saturn is in your sign or your rising sign, it's like each step is to become a more and more mature version of yourself. So every Pisces or Pisces rising, you're different people. You're living different lives. You're different ages. You've had different experiences. But the goal is to sort of set some goals in your life for you to start to become the greater purpose and potential of your life. So in theory, when you look back at 2024 and 2023, 2024, and parts of 2025, you should see that there is like things that are happening, things that are really shaping and transforming and forging your life. And maybe you're stepping into greater roles of responsibility. Maybe you are setting boundaries. Maybe you're cleaning things out. Maybe you're saying yes, you're saying no. Saturn loves commitment. Saturn loves following through. Saturn loves accountability. So that continues to be the major hour in your life. With Mercury square Saturn this week as well, Mercury governs your career. It governs, is that right? Mercury governs relationships and Mercury governs your home environment. Jupiter governs your career. So this is where the four directions of your life, the four corners of your life are really all up for review. Kind of is sort of the bigger theme as you go into the new year. If the four areas, the four major directions of your life are up for review, what are you choosing? And so that this might be a week and even into next week that's asking you, what do you want to choose? What do you need to choose? Capricorn season means that you're beginning to come to the end of your personal zodiac calendar. It is your 11th sign. So it's a time about community, friends, social connections, the future, looking out towards the world, participating in the world, social issues, social causes. And so we'll talk more about that next week, especially with the Capricorn new moon on the 30th of December. So there you go. That is your look at the astrology for December 23rd through 29th of 2024. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, season's greetings, happy solstice, all the things. Whatever you do celebrate, I hope it is a wonderful time for you. It's certainly been a very interesting year. We're going to go into 2025, another interesting year. And just a reminder, I did a whole 3-hour presentation on the astrology of 2025 and what it means for you, but also what does it mean in general and for the collective. The link is in the show notes. You can also get the webinar on my website, empoweringastrology.com. So I will see you all next week where we will ring out the rest of the year together. And until then, you can follow me online at empoweringastrology.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Spotify. And you can book, of course, a consultation with me. Some of you are my clients who are in the live chat, or even those that are watching on the replay. I know some of you are my Tuesday club. So until next week, take care. Happy holidays. Be well. Bye-bye.